All right, guys, so let's jump straight into it. Thank you for being so patient with me. You're the bestest class in the whole world. All right, so remember when I told you guys about this picture that I would find with the turtle? So let's have a look at it now. What is going on? What is affecting the turtle directly? What is directly affecting the turtle? What kind of environmental issue? There we go, pollution. All right. And remember when we had said that all the different environmental issues are interconnected? So let's look at this now. So the turtle is going to swallow that plastic, right? Then the turtle will more than likely it will die. And if we have more and more and more turtles being affected in this way, we're going to, there we go. There we go. So if we have way more than just this one turtle that we're seeing in this location, swallowing on plastic, then you can imagine that we're going to have loss of biodiversity, right? And if if there's a loss of biodiversity and the ecosystem is off balance, then we're going to have more climate change, right? See that? See that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have to understand that in many different cases, the environmental issues are interconnected. So next slide from Monica. Let's touch it one time. So man's mismanagement of his environment will eventually be his undoing. All right, next one. So it's very important for us to manage our environment. So what is the environment? The environment is our surrounding. So anything that surrounds a specific species is its environment. So it's the things we hear, it's the things we see, the things we can touch, everything around us. Next one. So it includes our air. So it's basically whether it's tangible or intangible. So the people around us is our environment, the water, plants, animals, etc., etc., etc. So plants and animals, we all need a healthy environment to survive. Next one. So for our ecosystem, it is the interaction between the plants and between plants and animals and their environment. So that's the difference now, right? So we're looking at the interaction. I'm not going to go full blown into ecosystem, but this is a term that we want to ensure that we know. Ecosystem is an interaction between living things and their non-living environment. Next slide. That I word is very important. So environmental issues are the harmful effects of human activity on the environment. So we are the ones who cause these issues. Yeah, so that's a keyword: human activity, negative human activity on the environment. And as I said, each are interconnected. Next one. All right. So biodiversity. What is biodiversity? It's the measure, back from it, it's the measure of a variety of plants and animals in an environment. So biodiversity is basically how much of each things are there, right? So if we have different kinds of birds and different kinds of mosses and different kinds of trees, then we have a higher biodiversity than, yeah? So the importance of biodiversity is that it maintains a balance of the ecosystem. Now, if we have a loss of biodiversity, as we explained with the turtle example, if we're having a loss of biodiversity, it means to have an imbalance because where the turtle would have been functioning, they're no longer there. So things are going to be off balance. And the importance of biodiversity as well is to provide biological resources. Yeah. So what is available, we can have access to. But when nothing is available, we won't have any access to it. So next slide. So biodiversity can be found within species, between species, or within the entire ecosystem. That's how we can describe biodiversity. Click again for me. So yeah, we can run through it and then we're going to discuss. All right. Now go back for me. We got too far. Go back. All right. Thank you. All right, there we go. So some major concerns are invasive species, the loss of ecosystems. We're going to look at invasive right away. The loss of ecosystems, and that's that's very what do you call that now? That's kind of long term, right? Because if we keep destroying the habitat, or destroy habitat after habitat, then we can lose an entire ecosystem. And major concern as well is the loss of species. I'm going to look at that as well. So next slide now. So one invasive species we know in Jamaica and all around the world is the famous bamboo. Everybody loves bamboo. We love looking at bamboos because bamboos kind of send peace and they just look so nice to have, but they grow so rapidly. So next slide for me. Let's look at some properties of bamboo. So it's an invasive species. We're going to find out why it's an invasive species. So bamboo is the fastest growing plant on earth. Yeah, the fastest. Yes, it's an invasive plant. I'm going to see why right now. For me. It spreads so good and endangered plants, and the home is a big problem because it is wiping out a lot of our native species of plants. They need to use bamboos and help people everywhere that people should stop the spread of bamboos because they grow so easily. If you cut off a piece of bamboo, you can just plant it back in the ground and it will catch and it will grow. And it spreads in very wide areas as well. Next for me. So yes, so endangered animals and plants are at risk of extinction when invasive plants and animals are introduced into an ecosystem. And as I told you before, if we're gonna have the trees that should be spreading, right? If they're overcome by bamboos, many of the animals who would have needed to perch or feed off this particular plant, if they're not able to grow any further, and remember that in a forest, life is being recycled. So after time, trees die while trees are generated. And if there's no more regeneration, then when trees die, they won't be replaced. So these habitats for our endangered animals will no longer exist. So they're at risk of extinction. Yeah, as well as our plants as well. So when you think about endangerment, don't just think about animals. Plants are at risk of extinction as well. All right, next slide. So that's about invasive species. And we also have invasive animals, you know. Do you know an invasive animal in Jamaica? Think about back in history. Stay right there. Think about back in history. Right, there we go. The lionfish is an invasive species. Good job. And we also have the mongooses. Mongooses are invasive species as well. Good job, Danielle. So let's look at endemic and what this brings about. So endemic just describes plants and animals that live in a specific place and they cannot be found outside of that location. Like you will not find polar bears in Jamaica. I will not find the Jamaican boa in Mexico. That's what endemic means. Next slide, please. One specific plant that is endemic to Jamaica, skip again, is the Jamaican rose. Have you guys ever seen this plant? It is a beauty. And even though you've never seen it before, it's found, all right. So even though you've never seen it before, it's actually found in wet montane forests, and you can find it in the National Park of Jamaica. So if you take some time to go hiking one day and go on one of the trails, you'll find perched on a tree, on one of the trees. It's an epiphyte, and it is a beautiful sight. All right, next slide. That's the Jamaican rose, guys. So endangered. So we're going to look at the meaning of this. So it's any plant or animal that is in danger of disappearing forever. So if a particular type of plant or animal dies out completely, it becomes extinct. And we have a universal body called the International Union for Conservation of Nature, that's the IUCN, and what it does is provide red lists. So it red lists species. They monitor endangered species and they will tell if it is of least concern, if it is very vulnerable, or if it is high risk and very endangered. Yeah, so it monitors the amount of biodiversity all across the world. Nice, nice. And you'd have seen how they display it out, right? So you can, on their website, as Daniel was saying, you can actually type in the name of the animal or the plant, and it will show you if it's at risk of extinction or if it's at, it's at a rate of not being very concerned about it. All right, next slide, please. I love these knowledgeable children, you see? Love it, love it, love it. All right, so plants and animals become endangered when their environment, as we know, or habitat. So that's the word. That's another word for habitat. Their environment changes or disappears. Let's go along. Apart from natural disasters, remember humans are the biggest problem. Apart from natural disasters and invasive species, humans can cause species to become endangered through pollution, hunting, and land degradation. Just wanted to throw in a little connecting environmental issue for us to see that they're all interconnected. All right, next one. So let's look at an endangered species. This is the Jamaican blackbird. And I know you guys can see blackbirds all over Jamaica. You see them on the light wires, you see them flying about in the sky. But those aren't the Jamaican blackbird. We have many species of blackbirds in Jamaica. But the Jamaican blackbird is endemic to Jamaica and is at risk of being extinct. And let's see why. So next slide, please. All right. So it's endemic to Jamaica because it is one of 28 bird species found nowhere else in the world. So Jamaica has 28 different endemic bird species. And even though we have this amount, there's so many birds that migrate to Jamaica during most times in the winter because Jamaica is so warm and it has a rich biodiversity. So you have birds that migrate to this area. So at particular times, it's really nice to go bird watching and you can see a lot of different birds. What is that? ORUA? Which one? Good birds. Okay. All right, next slide, please. Lenika, next slide for me, please. All right. So they can be spotted in some forest areas of the national park. Click for me. Click for me again, Lenika, please. All right. So we know that they're endemic because they can only be found in Jamaica, and they're endangered because their homes are constantly destroyed. So they feed on insects and the smaller animals, yeah, that you can find in epiphytes. And if you're cutting down the trees that epiphytes have to perch onto, one such epiphyte, just like the Jamaican knows, then they will not be able to have food. And if they're not having food, then they're going to die. So next slide, please. All right. So we look at extinction. Again, we know that extinction is when the entire population of a species dies out completely. So once it's extinct, it is gone forever. So cancer, I remember I had popped into a class and you guys were looking at different animals, right? Can you tell me an animal that was extinct or is extinct in Jamaica? So any of that. So whether it is extinct or was extinct in Jamaica. Can anybody tell me that? All right, let me just so Jamaican coney. I bet you never know that one. So the Jamaican bet you never know that. Laws are put in place to protect them. Yeah, because what? Okay, good. Yes, the maroons also eat them. So they're endangered because the population drastically reduced, mainly due to being hunted and their habitation, putting two more environmental issues right there. Right. So looking at conservation strategies. So yeah, so we have protected areas and Jamaica environmental laws. So let's look into protected areas, guys. And we're at the end, you know. Told it's not gonna be a long one, you know. So protected areas are established to preserve biodiversity. And some protected areas are like the Goat Island. Yeah, the next one. So these areas you can, if you, well, they're very protected, so the laws are more stringent in these areas. So you can't hunt past certain boundaries. You can't you can't clear forests past certain boundaries, right? And those are the different measures that they put in place. Yes, we have to find ways of conserving, yeah? So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for participating.